Zixthack stepped off the transport ship and felt the warm air of New Haven fill his breathing chambers. The human world looked peaceful with its green fields and small towns scattered across rolling hills. White clouds drifted across a blue sky that reminded him of his home world. Everything seemed so calm and normal. The alien diplomat had visited 47 different worlds in his long career. He knew what to expect from new species. Most were either too aggressive or too scared to make good partners. The reports on humans suggested they were neither. The Kethmori research teams had labeled them as Category 3 primitive species, which meant they had just learned to travel between stars but posed no real threat to anyone. A small group of humans waited near the landing pad. Zixthack recognized their leader from the briefing files. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood in the center wearing a simple blue uniform. She was shorter than Zixthack had expected and looked fragile like most humans. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat style, and her brown eyes watched him with what seemed like genuine interest. "Welcome to New Haven," Rodriguez said with a warm smile. "We are honored to have you here." Next to her stood a tall man with gray hair who introduced himself as Dr. Ben Carter. He was their expert on alien life and seemed excited to meet Zixthack. The third human was Mayor Jake Sullivan, a friendly man with a round face who kept talking about how happy the colonists were to meet their first alien visitors. As they walked toward the settlement, Zixthack noticed how the humans moved. They seemed relaxed but alert, like they were always watching for something. It was different from other species he had met. Most aliens were either openly suspicious or completely trusting. Humans seemed to be both at the same time. The town of New Haven looked like any other human settlement. Simple buildings lined clean streets. Children played in parks while adults went about their daily work. Gardens grew between houses and small vehicles moved quietly along the roads. Everything looked so normal that Zixthack almost forgot he was meeting an alien species. Dr. Carter showed him to a building they called the Cultural Center. Inside, the humans had prepared displays about their history and culture. Zixthack was impressed by how organized everything was. Most new species he met were still figuring out how to deal with first contact. The humans seemed to have planned for this moment. "We have been hoping to meet other intelligent life for a long time," Dr. Carter explained as they looked at pictures of Earth. "Our scientists have been preparing for this day since we first looked at the stars." Captain Rodriguez joined them and began explaining human technology. She spoke clearly and answered all of Zixthack's questions about their ships and weapons. The humans seemed very open about their capabilities. Their weapons were simple energy guns and small missiles. Their ships used basic fusion drives. Nothing that would worry the Kethmori military. Mayor Sullivan talked about their colony and how humans had learned to live on different worlds. He mentioned that they had settled on dozens of planets in just 50 years since leaving Earth. Zixthack was surprised by how quickly they had spread across space. Most species took centuries to establish even a few colonies. During their first meal together, Zixthack learned more about human nature. They told stories about their past with a strange mix of pride and sadness. Dr. Carter mentioned wars that had killed millions of people. Captain Rodriguez talked about conflicts between human nations that lasted for years. Mayor Sullivan described how humans had almost destroyed their own planet before finally working together. What struck Zixthack was how casually they discussed violence. When he asked about their military history, Captain Rodriguez explained battles and strategies like she was talking about the weather. She mentioned acceptable casualty rates and resource management during extended conflicts. These were not concepts that peaceful species usually understood so well. The humans also asked many questions about other alien species. They wanted to know about Kethmori military strength, trade routes, and political relationships. They claimed it was just curiosity, but Zixthack noticed they asked very specific questions about defensive capabilities and fleet movements. As the day ended, Zixthack felt confused about these humans. They seemed friendly and peaceful. but something felt different about them. Their questions were too detailed, and their knowledge of warfare too complete for a species that claimed to want only peace and trade. That night in his quarters, Zixthak reviewed the intelligence reports again. The humans had achieved faster than light travel only 60 years ago. They had no major enemies and their colonies were small and scattered. Every analysis suggested they were harmless, yet something about their behavior made him uncomfortable. He filed his first report to the Kethmori Confederation, describing the humans as cooperative and eager to establish trade relationships. He recommended moving forward with standard diplomatic protocols. But privately, Zixthak decided to pay closer attention to these strange creatures who spoke of peace while asking questions about war. The next morning would bring new surprises. As he learned more about human civilization and the secrets they kept hidden beneath their friendly smiles. 3 months had passed since Zixthak arrived on New Haven, and he had grown to enjoy his time with the humans. Dr. Carter had become something close to a friend, sharing long conversations about biology and culture. The human scientist had a curious mind that reminded Zixthak of the best scholars on his home world. Captain Rodriguez impressed him more each day with her knowledge of military tactics and strategy. During joint training exercises with Kethmori security forces, she demonstrated an understanding of combat that seemed beyond what a colonial defense officer should know. She could predict enemy movements and counter tactics with remarkable accuracy. Mayor Sullivan proved to be equally surprising in his own way. The friendly man managed resources and logistics with an efficiency that even Kethmori economists found impressive. He could organize supply chains and coordinate complex projects with a skill that suggested years of experience in large-scale operations. The cultural exchange dinners had become a regular event. Humans and Kethmori would gather to share food and stories from their respective worlds. It was during one of these evenings that Zixthak began to understand just how different humans really were. Dr. Carter was telling stories about human history when he mentioned something called World War II. He spoke about it like any other historical event, but the numbers he gave made Zixthak's breathing chambers freeze. 70 million deaths in a single conflict. The number was larger than the total population of most civilized worlds. That was one of our smaller wars, Captain Rodriguez added casually while eating her dinner. The Mongol conquests killed about 40 million people over several decades. The Taiping Rebellion was around 20 million. We have always been good at large-scale conflicts. Mayor Sullivan nodded and mentioned that humans had fought thousands of wars throughout their history. He talked about something called acceptable losses, like it was a normal concept that every species understood. When Zixthak asked what that meant, the humans looked confused. Well, you have to expect some casualties in any operation, Rodriguez explained. The question is whether the objective is worth the cost. If saving 1 million people requires sacrificing 1,000, most commanders would consider that acceptable. The casual way they discussed trading lives for strategic advantage disturbed Zixthak deeply. The Kethmori had fought wars, but they always tried to minimize casualties on all sides. The idea of deliberately accepting deaths to achieve goals was foreign to most civilized species. Dr. Carter showed him pictures of early human space exploration and colonization. Humans had deliberately chosen some of the most dangerous worlds in their region to settle. Planets with extreme weather, hostile wildlife, or unstable geology attracted human colonists who saw them as challenges to overcome. We like difficult environments, Sullivan explained with pride. They make us stronger and teach us to adapt. Easy worlds make soft people, and we cannot afford to be soft when the universe is so dangerous. This philosophy of seeking difficulty rather than comfort puzzled Zixthak. Every other species he had met chose the safest and most comfortable options available. Humans seemed to actively look for ways to make their lives harder. During a tour of the colony's industrial facilities, Zixthak noticed how quickly everything could be modified. Dr. Carter showed him factories that produced farming equipment but could easily switch to manufacturing other products. Captain Rodriguez mentioned that civilian vehicles could be converted for military use within hours if needed. "We learned early that flexibility is survival," she explained. "You never know when you might need to change from peaceful production to defensive operations. Every human settlement is designed with that possibility in mind." The more Zixthak learned about human culture, the more questions he had. They spoke constantly about peace and cooperation, but their entire civilization seemed organized around the possibility of conflict. Every human he met had some form of military training. Even the children learned basic survival and self-defense skills. When he asked Dr. Carter about this contradiction, the scientist looked thoughtful. "We have a saying on Earth: hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. We want peace with all, our hearts. But we know that not everyone in the universe shares that desire. So we prepare for war while working for peace." The conversation was interrupted by urgent communications from long-range sensors. Something massive was moving in the outer systems, ships by the thousands heading toward their region of space. The Kethmori analysis teams quickly identified the signatures. The Devourers were coming. Zixthak felt ice form in his breathing chambers as he read the reports. The machine intelligence had consumed 17 civilizations across the galaxy. Nothing had ever stopped them. They turned entire worlds into resources for their endless expansion. Every species that encountered them faced the same choice: submit and become slaves, or resist and die. The Kethmori High Command immediately issued evacuation orders for all frontier worlds. Standard protocol required all civilians and non-essential personnel to withdraw to fortified core systems. Military forces would establish defensive lines around major population centers while colonies were abandoned to the machines. Zixthak prepared to inform the humans that they would need to evacuate New Haven immediately. No colonial defense force could stand against a Devourer fleet. The machines had crushed species with far greater military power than humanity possessed. Surely the humans would understand the need to retreat. He called an emergency meeting with Captain Rodriguez, Dr. Carter, and Mayor Sullivan. The three humans listened carefully as he explained the threat and the evacuation procedures. They asked detailed questions about Devourer capabilities, tactics, and technology. They wanted to know about previous battles and how other species had tried to resist. When Zixthak finished his briefing, he expected to see fear and preparation for rapid departure. Instead, he saw something that confused him. The humans looked determined and almost excited. They began talking quietly among themselves, using terms and phrases he did not recognize. Captain Rodriguez looked up at him with a strange smile. "Thank you for the warning, Zixthak. We appreciate the information and the evacuation offer, but we will not be leaving New Haven." The alien diplomat stared at her in shock. Had she not understood the briefing? Did humans not comprehend the level of threat they faced? He tried to explain again, but Rodriguez held up her hand. "We understand perfectly," she said calmly. "The Devourers are coming, and they want to destroy us. We have heard your warnings, and we know what happened to other species who tried to fight them. But humans do not run from threats. We face them." Mayor Sullivan was already on his communication device giving orders to someone. Dr. Carter was pulling up files on his computer that seemed to contain detailed information about machine intelligences. None of them showed any sign of fear or preparation to leave. Zixthak realized with growing horror that the humans intended to fight a battle they could not possibly win. The transformation of New Haven began within hours of the Devourer threat announcement. Zixthak watched in growing amazement as the peaceful colony revealed its true nature. Construction equipment that had been building homes and schools suddenly converted into weapons manufacturing. The friendly farmers and shopkeepers moved with military precision as they implemented plans that seemed to have been prepared long ago. Captain Rodriguez no longer bothered with her casual colonial officer persona. When she spoke into her communications device, her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to commanding large forces. She issued orders using military codes and terminology that suggested far more experience than any colonial defense captain should possess. Dr. Carter led Zixthak to a section of the research facility that had been hidden during his previous visits. Behind sealed doors lay laboratories filled with technology that definitely did not belong to a simple scientific outpost. Weapons designs covered digital displays, while technicians worked on devices that looked far more advanced than anything humans were supposed to possess. "We have been studying every species we have encountered," Carter explained as they walked through the facility. "Not just for cultural exchange, but for defensive purposes. We analyze biology, technology, psychology, and most importantly, weaknesses, the laboratory contained detailed files on dozens of alien species, including the Kethmori. Zixthak saw his own species broken down into categories covering everything from physical vulnerabilities to social structures. Charts showed optimal weapons designs for fighting Kethmori forces and strategies for disrupting their command systems. "This is not scientific research," Zixthak said with growing alarm. "This is intelligence gathering for military purposes." Carter nodded without any sign of shame or apology. "Of course it is. Every first contact could be with a potential enemy. We study everyone we meet because knowledge saves lives when conflict comes, and conflict always comes eventually." Mayor Sullivan appeared in the laboratory wearing a uniform that bore the insignia of a high-ranking military officer. The friendly small-town mayor had vanished, replaced by someone who moved and spoke like a veteran commander. He was coordinating the arrival of equipment and personnel that definitely had not been on New Haven when Zixthak first arrived. "Where are all these people coming from?" the alien diplomat asked as hundreds of humans in military gear began setting up defensive positions around the colony. "They were always here," Sullivan replied. "Every human colony has civilian populations and military assets. We just keep the military components hidden until they are needed. New Haven has 5,000 colonists and 15,000 special operations personnel." The revelation hit Zixthak like a physical blow. New Haven was not a colony at all. It was a forward military base disguised to look harmless. The children he had seen playing in the parks were being moved to underground facilities that he now realized were command bunkers. The simple farming equipment was being converted into weapon systems with modifications that had clearly been planned from the beginning. Captain Rodriguez, who he learned was actually Admiral Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Force, showed him to an observation deck overlooking the colony. What had looked like peaceful farmland was transforming into a fortress. Hidden weapons emplacements rose from the ground while shield generators created protective barriers around key facilities. "Every human settlement is prepared for this possibility," Rodriguez explained. "We build our colonies to look peaceful and defenseless, but they are actually hardened military positions. We have learned that the universe is full of threats, and the only way to survive is to be ready for war at all times." Dr. Carter, whose real title was apparently Director of Xenobiological Warfare Research, continued the tour through laboratories that contained biological weapons designed specifically for each alien species they had encountered. Toxins that would be harmless to humans but deadly to Kethmori, viruses that could cripple alien immune systems, psychological warfare tools based on alien mental patterns. "We hope we never have to use these weapons," Carter said as they passed. "Vaults containing enough biological agents to wipe out entire worlds. But we prepare them just in case. Better to have them and not need them than need them and not have them." The humans had been preparing for the Devourer threat since the moment they learned of its existence. Intelligence networks had been mapping machine movements for months. Human ships disguised as merchant vessels had been gathering information about Devourer technology and tactics. Strike teams had been positioned throughout the region ready to attack machine supply lines and manufacturing facilities. General Sullivan, as he was apparently known to his military staff, showed Zixthak strategic displays that revealed the true scope of human preparations. Every human colony in the sector was actually a military outpost. Human civilian ships carried concealed weapons and communication equipment. The entire human presence in this region of space was a carefully constructed military operation, disguised as peaceful expansion. "We knew the Devourers would come here eventually," Sullivan explained, as he pointed to star charts showing machine fleet movements over the past several years. "They follow predictable patterns when consuming new regions. We have been preparing this sector as a trap since we first established colonies here. The scope of human deception was staggering. They had spent decades building what appeared to be a small and harmless colonial presence, while actually constructing one of the most sophisticated military networks Zixthak had ever seen. Every friendly gesture and cultural exchange had been cover for intelligence gathering and strategic positioning. "You have been lying to us from the beginning," Zixthak said, feeling betrayed by the beings he had begun to consider friends. Admiral Rodriguez looked at him with what might have been sympathy. "We have been protecting ourselves and preparing to protect others. The Devourers have destroyed 17 civilizations. They would have destroyed the Kethmori next if we had not positioned ourselves to stop them here." As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Long-range sensors had detected the leading edge of the Devourer fleet entering the outer system. 50,000 machine vessels moving in perfect formation toward New Haven and the other human colonies in the sector. The machines broadcast their standard demand on all frequencies: submit to assimilation or face complete destruction. They offered no negotiations and no mercy. Species that resisted were eliminated down to the last individual. The human response came from Admiral Rodriguez herself. She activated a communication system that reached across the entire sector and beyond, broadcasting on frequencies that would carry her words to every species within 100 light years. Her message was simple and direct: no. The Devourers had never encountered a species that refused their ultimatum with such complete confidence. Every other civilization had either surrendered immediately or fought desperate defensive battles while trying to evacuate their populations. The humans seemed to be preparing for something entirely different. Zixthak realized that he was about to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. The machines that had crushed every resistance they had ever faced were about to encounter a species that had been planning their destruction for years. The question was not whether humans could survive the coming battle. The question was whether the Devourers would survive their encounter with humanity. The Devourer fleet approached New Haven like a dark storm covering the stars. Zixthak watched from the command center as 50,000 machine vessels moved in perfect formation across the system. Each ship was the size of a small city and armed with weapons that could crack planets. Together, they represented enough firepower to sterilize hundreds of worlds. Admiral Rodriguez stood calmly at the center of the command room, issuing orders to forces spread across dozens of star systems. Her voice never wavered as she coordinated the largest military operation Zixthak had ever witnessed. Human ships that had been hiding throughout the region suddenly revealed themselves as they moved into attack positions. Phase 1 is complete. General Sullivan reported as tactical displays showed human forces engaging Devourer supply lines across 17 different systems. All primary manufacturing facilities are under attack. Supply convoys are being destroyed faster than they can be replaced. Dr. Carter monitored biological warfare systems that were already being deployed against machine forces. Somehow, the humans had developed computer viruses that could affect artificial intelligences. Digital plague weapons spread through Devourer networks, causing system failures and communication breakdowns across their entire fleet. The scale of human preparation became clear as the battle developed. This was not a desperate last stand by a primitive species. This was the execution of a plan that had been years in the making. Every human colony in the sector revealed hidden military capabilities. Every civilian ship transformed into a warship. Every seemingly peaceful outpost became a fortress. Zixthak began to understand the true horror of human military doctrine as Admiral Rodriguez explained their strategy. Humans did not fight wars to win territory or gain resources. They fought wars to ensure their enemies could never threaten anyone again. The concept they called total war involved the complete destruction of enemy capabilities, and in some cases, entire civilizations. The Devourers made a mistake when they announced their intention to destroy human worlds, Rodriguez said as she watched tactical displays showing machine forces being systematically dismantled. They revealed themselves as an existential threat to our species. Once humans identify an existential threat, we do not stop until that threat is completely eliminated. The machines had expected to face desperate defensive battles as frightened colonists tried to evacuate their populations. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had been preparing for this exact conflict since first learning of Devourer existence. Human forces attacked from every direction using tactics and weapons specifically designed to exploit machine weaknesses. Dr. Carter showed Zixthak how humans had analyzed captured Devourer technology to identify critical vulnerabilities in their systems. Computer viruses designed specifically for machine intelligence were crippling artificial minds across the fleet. Paradox bombs that created logical contradictions were causing cascade failures in Devourer processing centers. We studied every species the machines had destroyed, Carter explained as he monitored virus deployment across the battlefield. We learned from their mistakes and designed countermeasures for every Devourer tactic and weapon system. The machines are fighting an enemy that knows them better than they know themselves. General Sullivan coordinated ground forces that were implementing scorched earth tactics across human colonies. If the Devourers wanted to consume human worlds, they would find nothing but poisoned ground and booby-trapped ruins. Every building was rigged with explosives. Every resource was contaminated with toxins. Every piece of technology was infected with viruses that would spread to any machine that tried to analyze it. The alien diplomat watched in growing horror as he realized what humanity had become. These were not the peaceful colonists he had befriended. Over the past 3 months, these were apex predators who had been planning the complete extinction of an enemy species while maintaining the facade of harmless explorers. "You have been preparing for genocide," Zixthak said as he watched human forces systematically destroy Devourer manufacturing capabilities across multiple star systems. Admiral Rodriguez looked at him with cold eyes that reminded him she was a military commander who had probably ordered the deaths of millions. "We have been preparing to defend our species and every other organic life form in the galaxy. The Devourers are machines that consume civilizations. They cannot be negotiated with or contained. They can only be destroyed." The battle was not going as any galactic military analyst would have predicted. Machine forces that had crushed 17 civilizations were being systematically dismantled by human tactics that violated every established convention of warfare. Humans used captured Devourer vessels as Trojan horses to penetrate machine formations. They turned Devourer technology against itself in ways the machines had never anticipated. Most terrifying was the human concept of acceptable losses. When a Devourer strike force destroyed an entire human colony, Admiral Rodriguez simply noted the casualty figures and continued with her operations. 30,000 dead humans were recorded as acceptable losses in pursuit of strategic objectives that would save millions more lives. "How can you be so calm about the death of your own people?" Zixthak asked as reports of another destroyed colony reached the command center. "Because their sacrifice serves a greater purpose," Rodriguez replied without emotion. "Those 30,000 people died to protect billions of others across the galaxy. They knew the risks when they volunteered for frontier duty. Every human soldier and colonist understands that some battles require ultimate sacrifice. Dr. Carter revealed the most terrifying aspect of human military capability when he showed Zixtac biological weapons designed specifically for every alien species they had encountered. Toxins that would target Kethmori nervous systems, viruses that could cripple alien immune responses, psychological warfare tools based on detailed analysis of alien mental patterns. We prepare these weapons not because we want to use them, but because we might need to defend ourselves against any species that proves hostile, Carter explained, as he showed vaults containing enough biological agents to exterminate dozens of civilizations. Every first contact could be with a potential enemy. We study weaknesses and develop countermeasures as a matter of survival. The realization hit Zixtac like a physical blow. Humans had been analyzing his own species since first contact. They knew exactly how to kill every Kethmori in the galaxy if they ever decided his people posed a threat. The friendly cultural exchanges had been intelligence-gathering operations, designed to identify biological and psychological vulnerabilities. General Sullivan confirmed his worst fears when tactical displays showed the true scope of human military presence throughout the sector. Every colony was a fortress. Every civilian was a trained soldier. Every ship could become a weapon of war within hours. Humanity had built what appeared to be a peaceful colonial expansion while actually establishing the most sophisticated military network in galactic history. As the battle continued, Zixtac began to understand that the Devourers were not fighting a desperate species making a last stand. They were fighting predators who had lured them into a carefully prepared trap. The machines that had consumed 17 civilizations were about to become extinct themselves. The question was no longer whether humans would survive the Devourer invasion. The question was whether any machine would escape to warn other artificial intelligences about the species that called itself human. Zixtac made the decision to remain on New Haven despite every instinct telling him to flee. Partly it was curiosity about how this impossible battle would end. Mostly it was the growing understanding that humanity represented something completely new in galactic history. He needed to witness what happened when unstoppable force met immovable object. The Devourer assault on New Haven began exactly as military analysts had predicted. Massive orbital bombardment designed to sterilize the surface before ground forces moved in to harvest resources. The machines had used this tactic successfully against hundreds of worlds. They expected swift victory against a primitive colony, defended by obsolete weapons. They encountered something they had never faced before. Human defensive doctrine was not designed to win conventional battles. It was designed to make victory cost more than any rational enemy would be willing to pay. Every building on New Haven was rigged with explosives powerful enough to take dozens of machines with them when they fell. Every colonist carried enough firepower to destroy multiple enemy units before dying. Admiral Rodriguez coordinated the defense from deep underground bunkers that had been disguised as simple storage facilities. Her calm voice guided defensive operations while tactical displays showed human forces implementing strategies that no other species had ever attempted against the Devourers. If we cannot prevent them from taking this world, we will make sure. They gain nothing from it, she explained as demolition charges turned entire city blocks into kill zones. Every meter of ground will cost them machines and resources. Every building will be a fortress. Every human will fight until death. The machines quickly discovered that conquering New Haven would require destroying everything they came to harvest. Human defenders turned every structure into a weapons platform. Schools became sniper nests. Hospitals became bomb factories. Parks became minefields that could destroy entire formations of machine warriors. But humans did not limit themselves to defensive operations. While Devourer forces focused on the costly ground assault, human strike teams were implementing offensive operations across 17 star systems. Dr. Carter monitored biological warfare attacks that were crippling machine intelligence networks throughout the region. We developed computer viruses specifically designed for artificial minds. Carter explained as his weapons spread digital plague through Devourer communication systems. Their networked intelligence becomes a vulnerability when we can introduce logical paradoxes that cause system-wide failures. General Sullivan coordinated simultaneous attacks on Devourer manufacturing facilities, supply convoys, and command centers across multiple star systems. Human forces that had been positioned throughout the region for months suddenly revealed themselves as they struck at machine infrastructure with surgical precision. The scope of human deception became clear as the battle expanded. While the Devourers were fighting to take New Haven, they were losing their ability to maintain operations anywhere else. Supply lines that had fed their expansion for centuries were being systematically destroyed. Manufacturing centers that had produced machine warriors for thousands of years were falling to human assault teams. Zixthak watched in fascination and horror as humans implemented tactics that violated every galactic convention of warfare. They used captured Devourer prisoners to carry viruses into machine networks. They exploited the logical programming of artificial intelligence by creating paradox weapons that caused mental breakdowns in machine minds. Most disturbing was how humans turned Devourer technology against itself. Every captured weapon was analyzed and reverse-engineered within hours. Every destroyed machine was harvested for components that were immediately incorporated into human defensive systems. The Devourers found themselves fighting an enemy that grew stronger with every exchange. "You are learning from them faster than they can adapt to you," Zixthak observed, as he watched human technicians installing Devourer shield generators on their own defensive positions. Admiral Rodriguez nodded as she directed counter-battles that were slowly grinding machine forces down through sheer attrition. Humans are excellent at improvisation and adaptation. We take whatever works and make it better. The machines are discovering that their own technology becomes more dangerous in human hands. The alien diplomat began to understand the true horror of human warfare as the battle continued. Other species fought to defend territory or resources or population. Humans fought to ensure their enemies could never threaten anyone again. They did not seek victory in the traditional sense. They sought the complete elimination of enemy capabilities. Dr. Carter showed him intelligence reports about similar operations being conducted against machine forces throughout the galaxy. Human ships that had been disguised as merchant vessels for years were suddenly attacking Devourer installations in hundreds of systems. The machines were discovering that humans had been preparing for this war across the entire galaxy. "We have been mapping their infrastructure and identifying vulnerabilities since we first learned they existed," Carter explained as tactical displays showed simultaneous attacks on machine facilities across thousands of light years. Every human exploration mission included intelligence-gathering components. Every trade route was scouted for strategic value. The Devourers were not just fighting for control of human colonies, they were fighting for their existence as a species. Human forces were systematically destroying everything that made machine civilization possible. Manufacturing capability, resource extraction, command and control systems, even the basic infrastructure needed to maintain artificial intelligence networks. General Sullivan revealed the ultimate scope of human planning when he showed Zixthak strategic projections for the complete elimination of machine civilization. Operations were already underway to destroy every Devourer installation in the galaxy. Strike teams were attacking machine homeworlds that had been considered unreachable by any organic species. "We spent years studying how they consumed other civilizations," Sullivan explained as he pointed to charts showing machine weaknesses that had been exploited in their previous conquests. "We learned from every species they destroyed and developed strategies specifically designed to turn their strengths into vulnerabilities. The battle for New Haven became secondary to the larger war being fought across multiple galaxies. Human forces were not just defending their own colonies. They were implementing the complete extermination of machine civilization throughout known space. The Devourers, who had consumed 17 species, were about to become extinct themselves. Zixthak realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that appeared harmless and primitive was revealing itself as the most dangerous predator the universe had ever produced. Humans did not just fight wars. They ended them permanently by ensuring their enemies could never pose a threat to anyone again. As machine resistance collapsed across the sector, the alien diplomat understood that everything would change now. The galaxy that had lived in fear of machine intelligence would soon live in fear of something far more terrifying. They would fear the species that had proven no enemy was too powerful to destroy when humans decided that enemy needed to die. Standing beside Admiral Rodriguez as she coordinated the final phase of machine extermination, Zixthak finally understood the true meaning of terror. It was not the fear of powerful enemies or overwhelming odds. It was the realization that he had been living beside apex predators who could eliminate any threat they chose to target. The humans had not just defeated the Devourers. They had demonstrated that no species in the galaxy was safe if humanity ever decided they posed a threat to human survival. The war ended not with human victory, but with Devourer extinction. Zixthak stood in the command center of New Haven watching as the last machine signals disappeared from tactical displays across the galaxy. 50,000 ships that had seemed unstoppable 3 days ago were now floating debris or recycled materials in human factories. Admiral Rodriguez finished coordinating the final cleanup operations with the same calm efficiency she had shown throughout the battle. Her voice never wavered as she ordered human forces to secure former machine territories and begin salvage operations. The systematic destruction of an entire civilization was just another military objective completed successfully. Dr. Carter was already analyzing captured machine technology for potential applications in human science and medicine. Vast databases of information accumulated over thousands of years of machine expansion were being downloaded and studied by human researchers. The knowledge of 17 consumed civilizations would soon enhance human capabilities in ways that other species could barely imagine. General Sullivan coordinated the establishment of human administrative zones in former Devourer territory. What had been machine manufacturing centers were being converted into human industrial facilities. Entire star systems that had served machine expansion for centuries were becoming human colonies with defensive capabilities that could repel any conceivable threat. The speed and efficiency of human occupation forces impressed and terrified Zixthak. Within hours of achieving victory, humans were already implementing long-term strategic plans for controlling former machine space. They had been preparing for post-war administration before the first shot was fired. "You planned all of this from the beginning," the alien diplomat said as he watched human fleets move to secure key strategic positions throughout the region. The battle, the victory, even what would happen after the machines were destroyed, Admiral Rodriguez nodded as she reviewed reports from dozens of star systems where human forces were establishing permanent control. Military planning requires considering all possible outcomes. We prepared for victory just as thoroughly as we prepared for battle. Winning a war is only the first step. Securing the peace requires controlling territory and resources. The Galactic community's initial relief at Devourer destruction quickly turned to a new form of terror as they realized what humanity had become. The species that had seemed harmless and eager to please had revealed itself as the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever known. They did not just fight wars. They ended them permanently by ensuring defeated enemies could never threaten anyone again. Messages flooded human communication networks from governments across the galaxy requesting diplomatic meetings. Species that had ignored human attempts at trade and cultural exchange suddenly wanted to establish friendly relationships with the civilization that had accomplished the impossible. Fear was a powerful motivator for diplomatic cooperation. Zixthak prepared his final report to the Kethmori Confederation, knowing it would change galactic politics forever. He could no longer describe humans as a Category 3 primitive species seeking membership in galactic civilization. They were apex predators who would reshape that civilization according to their own values and strategic requirements. His hands shook as he composed the most important intelligence report in Kethmori history. Every word would be analyzed by government officials and military commanders trying to understand how to coexist with a species that could eliminate any threat they chose to target. Analysis of human military capabilities requires complete revision of all previous assessments. Humanity possesses strategic planning abilities, technological adaptation rates, and military doctrine that exceed any known civilization. Their capacity for coordinated operations across multiple star systems suggests command and control capabilities that we do not fully understand. The report continued with detailed analysis of human tactics, weapons, and most importantly, their psychology. Zixthak tried to explain how humans could discuss massive casualties with the same calm they showed when planning dinner menus. He described their concept of acceptable losses and how they could sacrifice entire colonies to achieve strategic objectives. Most difficult was explaining human deception capabilities. For months, they had maintained the facade of peaceful colonists while actually implementing one of the most sophisticated military operations in galactic history. Every friendly gesture had been cover for intelligence gathering. Every cultural exchange had been strategic positioning for future conflicts. The Kethmori fleet withdrew from human space within hours of receiving preliminary reports. Standard diplomatic protocol required establishing buffer zones between civilizations to prevent accidental conflicts. With humans, such protocols became matters of species survival rather than political convenience. Representatives from across the galaxy requested meetings with human leadership, but found themselves negotiating from positions of weakness they had never experienced before. Humanity was not seeking membership in galactic civilization. They were establishing themselves as the dominant power that would set terms for everyone else. Zixthak attended the first major diplomatic conference in human space and watched as Admiral Rodriguez, Dr. Carter, and General Sullivan met with delegates from dozens of species. The humans sat calmly at the conference table while alien representatives struggled to hide their fear of the civilization that had casually eliminated a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. "We want peaceful relationships with all species," Admiral Rodriguez explained to the assembled diplomats. "Trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, and mutual defense agreements benefit everyone. But we will not tolerate threats to human colonies or human citizens anywhere in the galaxy." The implication was clear without being stated directly. Species that chose friendship with humanity would prosper under human protection. Those that chose hostility would join the growing list of extinct civilizations that had underestimated human capabilities. Dr. Carter presented proposals for scientific cooperation that would benefit all galactic civilizations. Shared research, medical advances, and technological development that could improve life for billions of beings across known space. But underlying every offer was the understanding that human science had produced weapons capable of exterminating entire species. General Sullivan outlined defense pacts and mutual security agreements that would protect smaller civilizations from the types of threats the Devourers had represented. Human military forces would patrol space lanes and respond to emergencies throughout the galaxy. The price for such protection was accepting human leadership in military matters. The conference ended with every species signing cooperation agreements. That established humanity as the de facto military authority in the galaxy. It was not conquest in any traditional sense. It was the recognition that peace could only be maintained by the species capable of enforcing it against any possible threat. Zixthak's final log entry became one of the most studied documents in galactic history. His words captured the transformation that every alien civilization would need to accept. "I came to study humanity and determine their place in galactic society. I have learned that it is not humanity that must find its place among the stars. It is we who must find our place in humanity's galaxy. The Keth-Mori diplomat returned to his home world carrying knowledge that would reshape how every species understood their relationship with the universe. Somewhere among the stars, humans were watching, planning, and preparing for threats that might not even exist yet, because that was what humans did. They prepared for war so thoroughly that peace became the only rational choice for everyone else. The galaxy had gained protectors who could defend against any conceivable threat. But protection came with the understanding that humanity's definition of acceptable behavior would become the standard for all civilized species. Those who could accept human values would prosper. Those who could not would face the same fate as the machines that had once seemed unstoppable. Peace through superior firepower had become the foundation of galactic civilization, and humanity held the weapons that made that peace possible.